Hey friend, are you searching for a podcast that partners faith and entrepreneurship? A toolkit of tactical how-tos to start or grow your online business God's way? Hop over and check out The Stephanie Gass Show, a top 0.5% podcast for women who are ready to create impact and income without sacrificing family or their faith. Listen in to over 500 episodes on biblical business training, clarity on your niche, podcasting, monetizing, and so much more. That's STEPHANIEGASS, The Stephanie Gass Show. I pray it blesses you.
Good morning, my friend. I hope you're doing well. It's Monday morning. We're talking about 30 good decisions we can make in September. Today is the 5th day of September. It's been an incredibly busy weekend for me. But on Friday, I had an opportunity to sit down and get on Zoom and connect with my old friend, Dr. Daniel Amen. And this is going to be the first episode of what we're going to call Mind Change Mondays. Now, every Monday after this, we're going to talk about some aspect of what we can change our minds about to help us have a better life. Because you've heard me say it a million times, you can't change your life until you change your mind. That phrase came from George Bernard Shaw, the playwright, who said, a man who can't change his mind can't change anything. And the person who made it famous was Daniel Amen, who looked at brain health and realized that if you can't change your brain, you can't change your life. Your brain's got to be healthy. And today we have Dr. Daniel Amen, my friend. I'm so excited to share him with you. We'll be back with Mind Change Mondays every week. And all you have to do, my friend, is change your mind so you can change your life. And the good news is you can start today.
Hey, are you ready to change your life? If the answer is yes, there's only one rule. You have to change your mind first. And my friend, there's a place where the neuroscience of how your mind works smashes together with faith and everything starts to make sense. That place is called self-brain surgery. You can learn it, and it will help you become healthier, feel better, and be happier. And the good news is you can start today.
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, so glad to have you listening today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren, and I live in Nebraska in the United States of America with my incredible wife, Lisa, my father-in-law, Tata, and the super pups, Harvey and Lewis. I'm a neurosurgeon and an author, and I'm here to help you harness neuroscience, the power of your brain, faith, the power of your spirit, and good old common sense to help you lead a healthier, better, happier life. Listen, friend, you can't change your life until you change your mind, and I'm here to help you learn the art of self-brain surgery. To get it done, you can get the show notes and more at drleewarren.podbean.com. That's drleewarren.podbean.com, and if you like the show, please subscribe so you never miss an episode, and tell your friends about it. If you tell 2 or 3 friends this podcast was helpful to you, imagine how much good we can all do around the world together. I'm Dr. Lee Warren, and I'm here to help you change your mind so you can change your life. Let's get after it. Well, folks, we're back. I'm super excited to have my good friend and our new guest, our guest today here, Daniel Amen, is with us. Dr. Amen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Makes me happy to see you.
It's good to see you, Daniel. And it's been a few years since I had you on the last time. And boy, you've been prolific. You really have taken social media by storm. And tell us a little bit about. Really, I think the first time I became aware of all that you were doing on Instagram was during COVID. You really started doing these videos and encouraging people. And tell us a little bit about that time period for you.
So my book, The End of Mental Illness, came out March 2nd, 2020.
Good timing.
And March 10th, I was supposed to fly from Southern California to New York to Manhattan to be on a national show. And I had scanned the host, and it was really an exciting time. And then I remember I'm actually in the same room I'm in now. The producer called me and said, they're closing the studio, don't come. And I'm so grateful I didn't end up March 11th in Manhattan, because that was really the epicenter of the beginning of COVID in the United States. And I remember writing down that night, mental hygiene is just as important as washing your hands.
Wow.
And then we ended up having to close our New York clinic for a month. One of my young employees ended up on a ventilator, and I'm like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah.
And then I lost my dad in May, and I ended up posting virtually every night for 70 nights on grief and managing stress.
Yep.
And I was on the radio every Thursday in London, helping people in the UK manage the stress. And I kept reading this passage from C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors. And he wrote it in 1948 about the atomic bomb, because everybody was freaked out about the atomic bomb. And he's like, why are you so afraid when the pandemic visited London virtually every year in the 1600s? And people are dying every day of cancer and railway accidents. He's like, sort of get a hold of yourself. And no, trouble has always been there. And if it finds you, let it find you doing sensible and human things.
Wow.
And, it was just really a great service to our community. But you know this, whenever you teach these concepts, you learn them more.
That's right. For yourself. Yep.
So, I did this big project at Saddleback Church called the Daniel Plan with Pastor Rick Warren. And it's very clear to me that when you learn something new, you have to give it away. Yeah. Because it's in the act of giving, you create your own support group, making you more likely to stay on the program forever.
Wow. That's beautiful. And that was a hard time for you. You lost your father, your mother and father both got sick, and then your father passed away. And so how was that? What was that like for you as grieving while trying to, you recognized, I think, as a provider that you had a national, international platform and you used it for everybody's benefit. So what was that like for you? Like picking up the ball and running with this mission of being the guy to help everybody else while you were hurting?
Well, it's always helped me. I love sharing what I learned. And probably the thing that helped me the most is I have these tiny habits I do every day.
Yep.
And I remember the day my dad died. It was awful. I remember the phone call from my mother. He's not breathing. I remember trying to get her to put him on the floor and pound on his chest while I'm calling the paramedics. It's really an awful day.
Yeah.
And I went to bed that night and I did what I always do. And people say getting healthy is hard. It's like, no, being sick is hard. Getting healthy is just a series of consistent positive habits.
Wow.
And when I went to bed that night, I said a prayer because I do that every night. And then I went, what went well today? Which is sort of funny, talking about this really incredibly awful day. But it's my habit.
Right.
And so as I went to bed, I went, what went well today? And, the critic part of your mind is like, seriously, you're going to do that today? But I did it because it's my habit. And I remembered this interaction between my mother and the police officer. And at the time, I was training the Newport Beach Police Department on how to become a brain healthy police department. So I knew Officer Darling and the interaction with them, he's like, Mrs. Amon, because someone died at home, we have to do an investigation. And she looked at him with a straight face, and she's 89 years old. And she said, do you think I was cheating on him? He said, do you think I had him killed?
Oh, wow.
And I knew she was kidding. But to be able to find fun in grief is just so beautiful. And then I remember the hundreds of texts I got that day from my friends who loved me. And then I remember just sitting with him before they took him away and holding his hand, and his hand was so soft. And then I went to sleep. And it doesn't mean I didn't grieve. I did, actually, publicly.
Yeah.
It didn't mean it didn't hurt. It did. Still hurts. But if you want to survive tough times, you got to get control.
That's right.
Over your mind. And, I've been having a lot of fun working with an Olympic athlete from Canada, and she's a pole vaulter. And there's no negative thinking if you're on the track. Yeah. You are not going to jump with the help of a pole 15 feet straight in the air if you're thinking you can't do it.
That's right.
And there's nowhere in school where we adopted our nieces. I don't know if I told you that, but we adopted our nieces, and I went to my 12-year-old niece's back to school night, 7th grade. There was not one class she's taking on how to manage your mind. And that's really insane.
You're right.
Because kids are assaulted now with mental health challenges more than ever in human history. Right. And they're suffering more than ever in human history. So it's these basic skills. And so the mission we actually have a nonprofit foundation called Change Your Brain Foundation. Our mission, this is not a small mission, it's 10 mental illness.
Wow.
By creating a revolution in brain health. Because I think what's going on in psychiatry is awful.
Yeah.
Making diagnoses based on symptom clusters with no biological data and drugging a generation. Last year, there were 337 million prescriptions written for antidepressants.
Wow.
And no one's talking to them about their diet, about natural supplements, about exercise, omega-3 fatty acids, learning not to believe every stupid thing you think, right. EMDR, a specific psychological treatment for trauma that I just love. And we can do so much better.
Wow. You said we could have a whole conversation about the couple of sentences you just said, but one thing that you're raising kids, raising kids, and you're recognizing that the world basically is telling everybody right now what you feel is always true, right? You need to act on all your feelings, and that's not good for your mental health. You're right that we need to arm ourselves to be ready for these negative thoughts and feelings that we have, and continue to counter them. And you give us some tools in your book, Your Brain is Always Listening. You give us a really good little checklist of what to do when you have a negative thought and how you process and handle that. Give us a little rundown of what you do with that.
Well, whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, don't reach for marijuana or alcohol.
Right.
Just write down what you're thinking. Tana never listens to me. Tana's my wife. And so write it down. And then 5 simple questions, like super simple. Is it true?
Yeah.
And it's not true. She listens to me all the time. Maybe she's just having a hard day when she didn't listen to me.
Right.
Is it absolutely true with 100% certainty? You know that. Well, it's absolutely false. How does the thought make you feel? Awful. How does it make you act? Irritated. And what's the outcome? Separation.
Yeah.
So is it true? Is it absolutely true? How does it make me feel, act, and what's the outcome? How would I feel without the thought? I'd be a good husband. I wouldn't be bothered at all.
Yeah.
And the last one's my favorite one, is you take the original thought that's bothering you. Tana never listens to me. And you just turn it to the opposite. Tana often listens to me. And I'm getting ready next week to film my 17th public television special.
Wow, congratulations.
About the brain. And she's listened to all of the scripts. So it's just not believing every stupid thing you think. It's managing your mind. So when you start the day, you go, today is going to be a great day. Your mind will find out why. When you end the day, it's what went well today. And whenever you get this emotional storm, you got to sort of get an umbrella and, protect yourself. And, negative thinking is often a bad habit because people get attached to their bad thoughts. And I often say the brain is a sneaky organ. We all have weird, crazy, stupid, sexual, violent thoughts that nobody should ever hear.
Yeah.
And just because you have it says nothing about you.
That's right.
Do you attach to it?
Right.
And it's not the thoughts you have that make you suffer. It's the thoughts you attach to.
That's right. Yeah, so you kind of ended You Happier, the newest book, with this daily journey of happiness, like this process that you put yourself through every day that you should. My listeners are going to hear some familiarity there because I always couch things in brain surgery terms. And I talk about biopsying your thoughts. Like, it'd be crazy if you showed me a scan of your brain and it had a tumor in it, and I said, "Oh, that's a tumor. Let's go radiate your brain and let's go give you chemotherapy." You'd say, "Wait. We should find out what that is first, right? We should biopsy that before we treat it." And oftentimes we just treat our thoughts with reactions and not with identifying them and proving them out to be true or false. And like you just said, I love that. So you've been so helpful to me and to my family. One of our dear family members, I won't say their name on the show here, but one of our beloved family members actually went to Daniel's clinic and has really benefited, and their whole family, that subfamily of ours, has greatly benefited from your work. And I want to thank you publicly for that you've not only been a kind of a mentor and a writer that I follow and love, but you've been so kind to me, but you've also really helped our family. So folks, when I tell you that Daniel's work is helpful, it's really helpful, and it's been helpful to us personally. So this gentleman that's talking today has got some credibility with Dr. Warren here. So trust me. Well, if there's one Daniel Amen book that people ought to read, what's your favorite one? What's the one that people ought to have in their house?
It's like asking me to choose between my children.
That's right.
I love You Happier because Americans are the unhappiest they've been since the Great Depression.
Yep.
And it's just sort of a daily journey of what to do right. But your brain is always listening. Is great fun. The End of Mental Illness so fits our mission. Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, sold like 1.2 million copies. So I'm very fond of that book. Yeah. But, I love the process. We have 1.6 million followers on TikTok, of all things. And I love figuring out how to say something meaningful in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just... I'm just sort of having an e-ticket ride for those people that remember Disneyland 30 years ago. It's, being helpful, being useful. It's just critical to your sense of well-being.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I love the story that you told in the end of You Happier about Tana, when she went to her uncle gave a speech and helped her see about self-pity and responsibility, and you talked about that. Can you just tell us this story about taking responsibility versus blame for your things? That's beautiful.
Well, at Amen Clinics, we've been doing a big study on adverse childhood experiences on the ACE test.
Yep.
So it's a test from 0 to 10. People who score... And these are like bad things that happen to kids: physical, emotional, sexual abuse, parental abuse, divorce, incarceration. It's a lot of negativity.
Yep.
And I'm a 1 when I take the test. So not perfect, but Tana's an 8. Oh. And if you're 4 or more, you have higher incidence of cancer, higher incidence of heart disease, higher incidence of depression. And in her 20s, she had thyroid cancer and depression.
Yeah.
And she was really feeling bad. Her uncle was doing some trainings in success mindset. And when she went, her uncle asked her, "So how much responsibility do you want to have for these things?" And she's like, "What?
Yeah.
How can I be responsible for any of it?" He said, "I didn't say blame.
Yep.
I said responsibility. Do you want 50% responsibility for the outcome in your life, or do you want 100? And it completely shifted her mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, she wasn't responsible for being molested by one of her stepfathers, but she is responsible on how she reacts.
That's right.
How she takes her life forward, because quite frankly, all of us have bad things that happen
That's right.
to us. And if we look at the bad, we feel bad. But if we look at what can I do to make my life better, we're empowered and we do better.
Wow. That's such a great bunch of work that you're doing right now, Daniel. And I want to talk for a second about, to turn the conversation a little more serious. September is Suicide Awareness Month, as you talked about recently. And we had a listener write in a couple of weeks ago who, on their child's graduation from high school evening, the child came home late and was kind of in a bad mood and was kind of distant from the parents, and they realized after a while that they hadn't heard from their child, and they went out to the driveway, and the child was sitting in the car with a handgun in his lap and was like contemplating suicide on the night they graduated from high school. And the mom just kind of wrote in and said, "What do we do?" And I said, "Go to the emergency room. Like first get some help for your child." But talk a little bit about suicide, and you've done a lot of scans on suicidal people, and give us some guidance to help parents and people in that situation, because it's an important thing to talk about, I think, and not just kind of push it off into the shadows, right?
Hey friend, are you searching for a podcast that partners faith and entrepreneurship? A toolkit of tactical how-tos to start or grow your online business God's way? Hop over and check out The Stephanie Gass Show, a top 0.5% podcast for women who are ready to create impact and income without sacrificing family or their faith. Listen in to over 500 episodes on biblical business training, clarity on your niche, podcasting, monetizing, and so much more. That's STEPHANIEGASS, The Stephanie Gass Show. I pray it blesses you.
So one of my colleagues, Daniel Amina, wrote a book, came out last year, called The Suicide Solution.
Yeah.
But your first advice was absolutely right. It's the first thing you do when you find out someone's suicidal is you protect them.
That's right.
Because a lot of people who are suicidal say, "Help me."
Yeah.
And they'll tell their family, they'll tell their doctor. And often people, because it's such a shocking admission, they don't know what to do and they'll freeze. So don't freeze, get them help immediately.
Yeah.
I often talk to my patients about suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary feeling.
Right.
And if you're having dark thoughts, you need to not drink, because what happens, a lot of people have suicidal thoughts. Actually, in one study of Seattle, 55% of the population at some point in their life had significant suicidal ideation.
Wow.
Now, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death. So a lot of people do it, but not nearly half for sure.
Right.
And so just because you have that thought doesn't mean anything except something's going on that you should address. And I'm actually very clear with my patients that if you kill yourself, you've just gifted your children a 300% increased risk of killing themselves.
Wow.
Because often what happens when people get depressed is their brain gets in a tunnel, and the tunnel has no windows and no doors.
That's right.
And they only can see their pain, and they're like, everybody'd be better off without me. And it's like, no, that's one of the lies. Everybody'd be better off if you got help. And often that's where the imaging work I do is so important, because I've actually published 2 studies on suicidal behavior. Often goes with significantly low blood flow to the front part of the brain.
Yeah.
And so impulsivity is often high. And that's why I say don't drink, because that increases
Disinhibits you. Yeah.
impulsivity further. And there is so much hope. But, Lee, the problem is we're not thinking about depression right in this country. And there's a new study that got worldwide coverage that the serotonin hypothesis of suicide is wrong. And I've known that for 30 years. Suicide or depression is like chest pain. And nobody gets a diagnosis of chest pain.
That's right.
Why? Because it doesn't tell you what's causing it. And it doesn't tell you what to do for it. It's sort of like getting a diagnosis of fever, right? Nobody gets a diagnosis of fever. I can tell whether or not somebody's depressed in 20 minutes, right? That's like not hard. What I can't tell is why they're depressed. Do they have low activity in their brain from a head injury? Do they have toxic activity in their brain because they live in a mold-filled home? Do they have a high ACE score and they've never dealt with their past trauma? Does their brain work too hard or not hard enough? And saying everybody with depression should get the same treatment, which basically what's going on in this country,
right,
is insane. Sort of like what you had said earlier, everybody who's got a tumor, well, we'll just give everybody the same treatment. Well, that's nuts.
Yep, it's crazy.
Because you have to target the treatment to the individual.
That's right.
And nobody sort of biopsies depression. And when we look at it with scans, we're so much more effective in treating people because we target it to their brain rather than a cluster of symptoms.
That's amazing. That's exactly right. Yeah, you kind of maybe were the first national voice in psychiatry to talk about imaging. Like psychiatrists treat symptoms without ever taking a picture of the organ that they treat. So talk about how you came to that realization and got into functional imaging, and that's really the genesis of Daniel Amen as we know him today, right?
Well, I had no intention of doing it. When I graduated from medical school, I wanted to be a really good psychiatrist and a writer. And I think the writing thing worked, and I'm a really good psychiatrist. But before I went to medical school, I was an X-ray technician in the Army. So I was an infantry medic, didn't really like being shot at, so I got retrained as an X-ray technician. And our professors used to say, how do you know unless you look? And then when I was a second-year medical student, someone I loved tried to kill herself. And I took her to see a wonderful psychiatrist. And I just fell in love with psychiatry because I came to realize if he helped her, which he did, it wouldn't just help her. That ultimately would help her children and her grandchildren.
That's right.
Because they would be shaped by someone who was happier and more stable. And when I told my dad in 1979 I wanted to be a psychiatrist, he asked me why I didn't want to be a real doctor. Why I wanted to be a nut doctor and hang out with nuts all day long. And Lee, you know this. Psychiatrists are diminished among medical specialties. Yeah. Most of the medical specialties just sort of like go, why do you do that? Or how can you do that? Or that's not scientific. No. Because it's not. And when I got the opportunity to look at the brain, I was just like a little kid. It was so cool, so excited. A nuclear medicine doctor came to our hospital and gave us a lecture on brain SPECT imaging in 1991, and it just changed everything. Yeah, I do. And because I was because at the time I was also a writer and had written my first national book, I was able to write about our experience, which really elevated our visibility. And then people tried to kill me because what we do is different than what most other psychiatrists do. And if you really want to invite hatred in your life, do something different than the status quo.
That's right.
But it was so cool and so interesting, and my patients got better. It's like, well, how do you not do this? Right? Once you see, you can't unsee.
That's right.
And I've been blessed to have this mission. Now we're at 210,000 scans on people from 150 countries.
Wow.
We have 10 clinics around the United States. And it's just been great. But ultimately, people should ask this question. why are psychiatrists the only medical doctors who never look at the organ they treat?
That's right.
Right? As a neurosurgeon, there's no way you're doing surgery without imaging the brain. You know, I remember when I read your book, your first book about being in Iraq, and you know, you were running the CT camera because you had to have that information. Yep. Otherwise, you know, you're operating in the dark. And that's dark age stuff.
That's right.
You know, that's middle age stuff. That's not 2022.
We were still doing it in psychiatry. You're right. That story you told about your dad saying, why do you want to do that? I have a friend who's a neurosurgeon who was a professional boxer before he went to medical school. And he was pretty good. And his dad was all about it. And he got tired of getting beat up. So he went to night school and applied for med school. Didn't tell his dad. And then the night he got his letter to get in, after his last fight. He said, Dad, I got into medical school at Temple. And he handed his dad the letter. And his dad read it. And he said, but you could have been somebody. You could have been somebody. Yeah, it's amazing. So one more thing I want to talk about, Daniel. I promised you about 30 minutes, and we're right there. I'm going to respect your time. But one thing that I think is you really important that you say all the time is the difference between just telling people to be positive and be happy and put a smile on your face. You're not a motivational speaker, and you speak to that with this little couple sentences that you tell people about the difference between positive thinking and realistic thinking. I think it's super important to get you on record to say that to us today.
Well, I'm not a fan of positive thinking. Positive thinking is I could have the third beer tonight and it won't have a negative impact.
That's right.
I could have this affair and it won't really negatively impact my marriage. I'm a fan of accurate thinking. John 8:32, know the truth.
Yep.
And the truth will set you free. People who have low levels of anxiety die the earliest from accidents or preventable illnesses. It's having the right dose of anxiety that keeps you going forward toward your goals, and not too much, obviously, that makes you suffer. But think of always accurate thinking.
Love it.
Put a positive spin on it.
Love it. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It's remarkable to be with you again, Daniel. I so greatly respect and appreciate all that you do, and very grateful to have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. It makes me happy to see you again.
Hey, thanks for listening. The Dr. Lee Warren podcast is listener supported. Check out patron.podbean.com/Dr. Lee Warren. That's patron.podbean.com/Dr. Lee Warren. Patrons and partners get free books, transcripts, special patron-only episodes, and more. And partners like you allow us to stay ad-free and keep growing. Please subscribe to the show so you automatically get every episode. And if you like the show, you'll love my weekly letter. Check out my writing at drleewarren.substack.com, drleewarren.substack.com. Get the free newsletter every week for my best prescriptions for becoming healthier, feeling better, and being happier through the power of faith and neuroscience smashing together via self-brain surgery. drleewarren.substack.com. And if you need prayer, go to the prayer wall at wleewarrenmd.com/prayer. The theme music for the show is Make Us One by Tommy Walker, graciously provided for free by the great folks over at TommyWalkerMinistries.org. Check it out and consider supporting them. TommyWalkerMinistries.org. Remember, you can't change your life until you change your mind. And the good news is you can start today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you, friend. Have a great day.